Hey everyone. So today we're going to be looking at lesson 5 of our unit. So lesson 5 means that we are halfway through the unit. All right. So one thing to know with lesson 5 is it really is a follow-up to lesson 4. If you remember, I've mentioned this before in one of the times that we've interacted virtually, is that the things that we would have done in class, typically 2 of these lessons would be in one of our days at school. So lesson 4 and lesson 5 kind of pair up with each other. In many ways, lesson 5 is about seeing if you really know the terminology that was set up in lesson 4. So when we look over at today's essential question, we see that we've got 2 of them there. So far, I think it's just been 1 essential question per day, but there are 6 total essential questions, and they kind of fit like a puzzle into all our different lessons, and there just happens to be 2 that fit today. The first one is number 3. How did the US federal government respond to this national crisis? So, yesterday kind of set up what are the political beliefs as to why people would support more intervention or less intervention by the government, right? But today you're going to be looking at some specific examples of what were propositions for how to address it. Number 4, you had that essential question yesterday as well. It's just the idea that there are different perspectives, multiple perspectives, on the government's response to a national crisis like the Great Depression, whether they should get super involved to try to fix it or kind of stay hands off. If you watched the video yesterday, you know that political ideas about the economy tie directly into why people had different perspectives there. All right, so the lesson for today is again looking at some proposed ideas, all of which actually existed, and then deciding how they fit into the political spectrum you saw yesterday. So ultimately, our skill for today is close reading, because you're going to have to look at the descriptions of these policies very closely to say what are the important details that then reveal what the people who believed in these different proposed policies, why they believed it, and how it ties into their political ideas. So they can say, I want to do this, but what about that policy reflects their political ideas that showed up on the spectrum yesterday? So close reading, making sure that you're looking at the details very cautiously and having that attention to detail. Okay, ultimately, the key concept that comes out of today's lesson ties in with the one from yesterday, that today's modern political beliefs began during the Great Depression with some of those phrases like liberal and conservative when it comes to economic issues. They mean the same thing today that they meant in the Great Depression. We could not use these terms before the Great Depression the way we're using them now, but because the modern political spectrum and the one of the Great Depression line up, it's super important that you understand how those terms fit in with each other, how there's kind of different sides of the spectrum, and that there were many different policies that fit across that spectrum. All right, so let me show you what you're doing today. Go over to Google Classroom like we always do. So here we are. Again, first half of the unit has been posted, and so we're at, well, the end of the first half. We'll click on this right here. Now, notice I have included on here access to the Google Slides that I used to make the video. If you click on that, you'll be able to review the spectrum that was revealed in the video from the previous day. The work that you're actually going through today is on this Google Doc right here. So we'll open up that bad boy. Or good boy, I don't know. All right, so what we've got going on here is, again, all these different proposed cures for how to address the Great Depression. There's some directions there for you, so you can read through those on your own. But essentially what you're doing is you're saying, here's, let's see, A through I. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I guess 9 different proposed policies. And deciding, would this issue, would that belong on the left part of the spectrum? Or I guess for you, the left part of the spectrum, or the right part of the spectrum. So essentially you're deciding, is this more of a liberal policy, more of a conservative policy? Is it like just right there in the middle, kind of moderate, or does it belong way on one end of the spectrum? So this is applying the ideas with the specific history that was going on in this time period. On the right-hand side where it says terminology, it's description in the middle, but there is a specific term that goes with this, right? So often that's the way it works is, yes, this is what it would look like, but it has a name tied to it. So ultimately, the goal for you today, looking sort of back at the directions that we had in the first place, was that you need to figure out how do the policies that were being put forth during the Great Depression reflect the political ideas from the spectrum from the previous day? So I highly recommend having that spectrum just open otherwise so you can look at them side by side. Remember that Google Doc? You can type directly in there, and then I can go over the answers at some later point, maybe when we meet for our video conferencing. When do we meet? On Wednesdays. All right, folks, that's it for this one. So next week, we'll begin with lesson 6. So that stuff will be posted at the end of the week before. So if you really feel like doing it over the weekend to get a head start, you could. But we still have one more week of this lesson or this unit halfway through. So there we are. All right, you'll see me later. Good luck.